um, as everybody around here knows, but maybe Anna doesn't know, we had a pretty hot week weather-wise, and had a lot of our grandchildren coming by to use the swimming pool and trying to have fun and so forth. And I'm doing some stuff around, and I got really hot and sweaty, and so I decided to go in the pool, which I don't really do very often. And I got down the ladder about one step up to water up to my knees, and I hated it. I hated the way it felt. It was so cold, and you know, so here I am, hot and sweaty, and here's this beautiful crystal clear water, and I hated it. It felt terrible, and I felt like I was going into a batch of ice vinegar. It just, everything about it was terrible. And one of my grandchildren was standing behind me, and you know, she's 18 years old, and she said, "Grampy, just jump in," you know. And then I didn't, you know. I'm just looking at her, and then she goes, "Grampy, come on, just jump in." And I'm like, at that moment, I'm like, so much is going through my head. I'm like, I'm supposed to be this like really logical person, and there was nothing logical about me not jumping in. But there was 99% of me was like, this is terrible. Don't do it. I don't want to do it. Can't stand it. And so this fear of jumping in the water that just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, what am I afraid of? I was sitting there, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of water? Yeah, right. I mean, like, that'll hurt you, you know. And am I afraid of having a heart attack? I mean, there was even nothing that I was really afraid of. I was just afraid. And I love that, what Rose shared with us about fear, you know, that fear holds us. It's like captivates us, you know. So anyway, later on, I looked up fear in the Bible, and I've done it before, but I did it again. I wanted to refresh myself. And, you know, the Greek word for fear is phobos, so it's where we get the word phobia from. You know, you're aquaphobia, you're afraid of water or whatever, you know. And it literally means in the Bible, dread or a flight, meaning that you're just going to run when you see it. So, you know, hopefully you have a fear of bears in your backyard. You'll see one and just start running. That would be a good thing. But that's what most of the Bible verses use the word fear as phobos, and it's not a good thing. It's never used in a positive way. And then there's another Greek word, delia, I think. I'm not a Greek person to know how to pronounce that properly, but it means fearfulness, and it basically talks about being coward, having cowardness and timidity. Again, it's never used in the Bible in a positive sense. It's always in a negative sense. There is another word, it's eula be, I think it's pronounced, I'm not sure, and it means caution and reverence, and it basically refers to the fear of the Lord, just to have caution and reverence toward the Lord. But 99% of the verses about fear in the Bible are phobos, and it's not a good thing. It's never used in a positive sense. And so then while I'm looking that up, I remember one time when Jesus said to his disciples, he says, "Do not fear." And I've always scratched my head on that one, because I'm like, how do you just stop fearing? I mean, think about it. You don't just stop doing something. It's there. When I'm stood on the edge of that swimming pool, it wasn't like I could just say to myself, okay, I'm not going to be afraid of this anymore. It didn't work. It doesn't work that way. And so I looked that scripture up, and under the word do not, the word do not is not a word that means, you know, what we would think, just don't do it. It's an action word. It means you got to do something to not fear. You know, how do you have action to not fear? And of course, most of us, you know, being, you know, spoiled Americans and so forth, you know, most of us are like, we approach Christianity like, Lord, can't you just take it from me? Why don't you just take it from me so I don't have to deal with this anymore? Lord, just take it from me. Give me peace. I'm going to pray for peace. He's just going to give me peace. And then we kind of forget that the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, as Mark shared earlier, these are all fruits. These are all things that you get after you plant a seed and you water the seed and you weed around it and you fertilize it. These are all things that you work at. There's things that require action on our parts, not something that you just say, Lord, give me peace. Lord, do this. Lord, do that. Wouldn't it be nice if we just like like Lil was saying about, about giving our heart to the Lord. Wouldn't it be nice as soon as the moment you just say, okay, Lord, I follow you. And as soon as we do that, nothing bothers us anymore. Nobody bothers us. Our loquacious husbands don't bother us. Our whatever, our dog that scratched up this don't bother, and nothing bothers us anymore. We just have nothing but love, peace, and joy. So as Christians, we get disappointed. We're like, what's up? I follow you, Lord. I say I believe you. I go to church, and yet I'm not experiencing these things that I think that I should be experiencing. And the Lord tells us that's because you're not taking any action to do it. No action. And I'll just give you a couple examples. The funny thing is when Jesus walked on the water and he approached the boat, and Peter was like, I want to do that. And so Jesus said, okay, come. And I thought, well, he could have just levitated him up in the air and then brought him over and put him on top of the water. Peter wouldn't have to do anything. He'd be just like, oh. But no, he said, Peter, come. I want you to get up off your butt, and I want you to step outside the boat and get on top of the water. He said to the cripple guy, when he healed him, he goes, rise up and walk. He didn't levitate him to get him on his feet. He even said to Lazarus, who was dead, Lazarus, come forth. He woke him up, but then he required Lazarus to walk out of the tomb. It's amazing. Jesus wants us to obey. He wants us to take an action. But then once we're in the middle of that action, he provides us the ability to keep going, to walk on the water, to come forth. God always has us when we move with him. I've always had a problem theologically with prayer, knowing that God knows everything. If he knows everything and he knows every need that I have, then why would I bother praying for it? What's the sense in that? He already knows it, so why bother? Why do I have to go through this silly thing of going before him and praying when he already knows? But again, it's an action that we take. It's an action of faith that we take. And of course, James says, faith without works is dead. Well, let's make it clear. Works means action. It means doing something, whether it's getting on your knees or whether it's going to do something and getting up and walking. It's an action. Peter rose up and he walked, and that's how it happened. So I'm on the edge of that pool and I'm just praying, Jesus, take away this feeling so that I can just jump in and get this thing over with. And then I'm praying, Lord, can't you just give me more logic and less feeling? I don't want to have these feelings. I just want to be more logical and just make my decisions based on this and that. Or even better, Lord, make me faint. Make me fall over like I'm having a stroke or something. And let me wake up after I'm in the water so I don't have to go through this. Wouldn't that be better?
No.
And I'm like, Jesus, I'm waiting for you to do something here. And then Jesus is turning to me and saying, I'm waiting for you to do something. The most patient person in the world is a God who creates a universe, and he sits around and waits for us to be obedient. That's pretty amazing. He is calling us. He is calling us. People around us in our lives need us, and they need our help. They need our gifts. They need our prayers. They need our hugs. They need us. And they need us to face our fears and come forth like Lazarus. Come forth. I'm gonna throw a little humor in on this. Imagine if you were Lazarus and you woke up from the dead, and I don't know what they did. I don't know what he had on him and surrounded him and everything. And then Jesus just says, come forth. If it was my wife, the first thought would be, well, let me just look and see what my hair looks like before I come forth from this tomb, or what's my outfit? Is it going to be okay? Do I stink? Maybe I have this really bad odor. We got to stop and stop wondering about all the things about that. And we just got to do it. We got to be obedient to him. So eventually I jumped in. And when I jumped in, I'm like, oh, this is very nice. I'm cooled by the sensation. I'm clean, and I'm starting to have fun with my grandchildren. And this is what I'm trying to say to you right now: is we live in a world that the enemy is tormenting with deception, believing in lies. He's tormenting them with deception, and he's tormenting them with fear. And we as Christians need to be a light to the world that Mark was talking about, and help to lead people out of their fear. And so I just want to really encourage you today. Come out of the fear. Come out of your fear. In order to do that, you got to take action. I don't know what that action would be for your life, but that's what you got to do. Have a video to follow this up with. I hope that really helped you today.